The traffic AI in City Skylines 2 has been revolutionized from the ground up to be more intuitive, much more efficient, and should allow you to manage your city with an ease that isn't often seen in the first game. Today, we'll take a look at all 3 pieces of CS2 intel on traffic AI to give you the overview you need to get the brain processing everything that's going on so far, starting with pathfinding and the factors that contribute to it, how parking is influenced by these behaviors in coordination with overviews to help you see your city's capacity to handle traffic at any given moment, with a final look at the abilities that service vehicles have to keep the city flowing smoothly. Hard hats on, and headlong into pathfinding. The paths are much more findable. Pathfinding in City Skylines 1 was very robotic and very codified, as pathfinding was pretty much determined under one condition: get to point A to point B in the shortest amount of time possible. This, of course, causes a lot of headaches. If everyone acts the exact same, then no one is truly saving time, and we see that throughout City Skylines. Some of the most popular YouTube videos are how to handle and manage traffic, because it can be a doozy when everyone has a singular mindset. But not so in City Skylines 2. The AI uses multiple behaviors depending on the demographics of the person driving, I should say the person traveling, to give you a pathfinding cost. The AI will still create the cheapest route using these factors of pathfinding costs, but they are now affected by things like time. They want to get there the fastest. These are typically adults who just want to get there in the least amount of time. Then there's comfort, caring about the best drive overall. We're talking less turns, closer parking regardless of price. Elderly people tend to like this the most. And then there's money itself, the cost of fuel. You have parking lot prices, which are determined by yourself. Even things like mass transportation fares take effect in this pathfinding AI overall. It's not limited to driving. An interesting thing here, and I just want a side note, will fuel fluctuate in here, or is it kind of a set cost and the other factors will affect the cost of the fuel otherwise? It'd be interesting to see if we had an oil industry and the cost of fuel actually went down a little bit. I highly doubt it's that deep of a simulation, but if it was, that would be a really cool feature. Now, regarding money, teens, the demographic of teens, will care most about money because they simply have very little. And then you have behavior. Most people abide by the laws that are set within City Skylines 2, but you do have some outliers. Some may be more rash, depending on the type of person that they are. And also, regarding behavior, people do react to the scenarios around them. If a lane is open, speaking of lanes, cars will use all lanes. So if it comes to an intersection and it's a four lane intersection and 2 of the lanes are backed up on the far right, they will slowly start filtering over into the other 2 lanes, making full use of that, which is one of the biggest issues that we see in City Skylines 1. And again, why there are so many mods tied to traffic management, because of this, again, singular mindset to I need to go exactly where I want to go as quickly as I can, but everyone's doing that same thing. Now, what do these 4 factors do overall? Well, they create a more organic and dynamic form of traffic that is by default more efficient, since pathfinding is not singular minded. Again, if everyone has their own methods, there's going to be a mix and a jumble. But with all of these different factors combined, you're using up more lanes. You are varying your speed, honestly. You are varying the number of turns potentially, so not everyone's going to go the same path. All of these things create just by default that more efficient pathfinding, which is awesome to see. And all of those will therefore allow a larger population to work for your cities, because not everyone's taking the exact same 4 turns. It's a very exciting feature, because I cannot tell you how many times I've had issues with traffic in City Skylines. With all of this traffic behavior though, how can you digest it appropriately? And more specifically with parking needs and your overall traffic management. Well, regarding parking specifically, each demographic approaches parking differently, which is another cool aspect to think about. Adults park as close and as quick as they can. Again, they are getting there as fast as possible. So if I can get further up in the parking spot and not have to circle around a parking lot, I'm going to do that. The elderly will park closer to their destination regardless of the price. A little older in life, probably have a little bit of a savings account. They can afford that extra price ticket as long as it gets them to where they don't have to walk so far. Grandma and grandpa don't like turns. Grandma and grandpa don't like parking way in the back. Your teens will park really far away and or use mass transit. So this is kind of a cool thing to think about. You could manage your traffic, manage your parking spaces where you could have a set series of parking lots. One that's pretty expensive, so you can take care of the elderly and make some money on the side. You have one parked a little bit further away that probably doesn't stay as full, allowing adults to park there as quickly as they can, get out and start walking. And then you have another parking lot that's even cheaper, like a super cheap parking lot, which cater to those teens, where you're still going to get them using their vehicles, and it will allow them to park far away, save some money, and walk a little bit further. Or you can jack up parking lot prices, which would then maybe encourage liberally, your citizens to focus on mass transit. If it takes $10 to park my car, but I can take a train ride from my house or close to my house to my destination downtown for $7, I feel like your citizens by default, based on this behavioral AI, will be able to, or rather want to, focus on mass transit. It's a good way to reduce the number of cars on the road. It also means you're going to have to think appropriately based on what demographic is going to go where. If you have a high density office sector, you're obviously probably going to be focusing more on the adult demographic, which means you're going to want several more parking lots and parking spaces than you could before, or rather than you would before. And that also means you may be able to take a little bit advantage of your citizens, because if your adult is trying to just get point A to point B as fast as they can and don't care so much about parking price, then you're going to be able to take advantage of the office sectors needing a lot of parking and jack up the price locally in that specific area alone. Now, other things, entertainment venues, for example, this comes into effect if we have concerts or stadium halls, any of that sort of stuff. You may want to hook up mass transit to cater more to those teens who are going to be more likely to go to those types of events. So rather than fill it full of parking spots, maybe you have a centralized transportation hub in your entertainment sector. How you approach your traffic management is going to be vastly different, and I love that aspect. I love having to think ahead of time. What am I going to do to cater to the demographic that I want in these specific parts of town? And to be able to understand that a little bit better, you have your traffic info view, which combines your parking requirements, the demands of your city for parking versus your availability, the traffic volume, and the traffic flow. Traffic volume being the amount of vehicles that are in one specific section. This info view does cater by individual road sections, by the way, so that's a pretty cool thing to be able to see specific choke points and what's going on. But then traffic flow, how easily is traffic running through? You could have a high traffic volume and a very high traffic flow, whereas you could also have a very high traffic volume and a low traffic flow, in which case you have blockage, you have backups, you have issues going on. Or you could have low traffic volume and low traffic flow for whatever reason, be it road conditions is a big one. So road maintenance is a huge thing, as we emphasized in the last part in the developer diary number 1. But it's going to have a lot of effects in how your citizens treat the roads and their behaviors behind it. Now, the last and rather large piece to this traffic behavioral AI is service vehicles. We're talking ambulances, road maintenance, garbage trucks, fire trucks, policemen, etc. Anyone that provides a service to the city, including taxis. We'll get to that in just a second. But service vehicles will have additional protocols to their behavioral system. And this is allowing certain vehicles to bypass the normal rule sets to get to their destinations quicker. Mind you, these are more response units. You're talking, again, ambulances, fire trucks, police stations. People who need to get somewhere to respond to something so something else bad doesn't happen. It doesn't mean that garbage trucks will run red lights to get to their garbage faster. but emergency responders just might. And that is a riskier behavior because it could potentially lead to accident. These are reactionary vehicles is the point that I'm getting to, and they will do what they can to get that job done so they can respond to it and potentially save some lives, no matter what their route environment says. We also see this in the different road types. There are certain road types that we saw in the previous developer diary that will allow your potential service vehicles to use those roads only. So if you have a very high traffic area, it would be pretty wise to have a pedestrian walkway going straight through it, one that allows vehicles to traverse that in the case of an emergency. So you could have a pedestrian sidewalk or a pedestrian roadway cutting through a high density area that would actually act as a double feature of allowing pedestrians to have their own dedicated walkway, but also allow emergency responders to cut through the heart of a very high density area to respond to those a little quicker. Now, mass transportation isn't exempt either, as taxis can bend the rules a little bit too. Now, this is in a bit of a different way. So for one, taxis at first will only transport your citizens between different taxi stops. So they'll probably bend the rules a little bit, running a red light to get their passenger there faster because they have a little bit more of a priority. But note that you can upgrade your taxi systems to be able to just drop citizens off wherever they want. Now, what this will do, I have never actually used the taxi system because, again, with that singular mindset of City Skylines 1, it doesn't feel like it's an effective use of resources. Maybe it was, and I've been missing out along. But I hope that the taxi system does provide some great relief to the city regarding, taking a few cars off the road, or at least not adding more unnecessarily. But the best part that I really enjoyed out of all the traffic AI features and the dev diary and everything, your service vehicles can now be tied to districts. This creates super effective coverage areas. I can have my little city suburb, and they have their own dedicated police force, fire response units, and emergency response units. Or I can have a high density downtown and make that its own district area, and then be able to have my bigger police headquarters only patrolling that area, or my big giant fire station only patrolling that section. Perhaps garbage is tied to it in that extent too, which is a really great feature. This is going to allow us to be able to make smaller micro cities that really weren't possible in City Skylines 1. And with the larger scale of bigger squares, a lot more squares and stuff, we could potentially be legitimately looking at being able to build more than one quote unquote city inside of the area in which we're playing. You could have dedicated cities with dedicated communities and dedicated service vehicles that aren't going, 30 minutes into another town to try and respond to something unless it's absolutely necessary. Overall, the traffic AI does look to make City Skylines 2 a completely different ballgame in how you can tackle the way your citizens will traverse your city. I love everything in here. And again, I want to test it out myself to see how valid it is, because we can say, oh, it will work this way, but until we get the hands-on experience, there's not going to really be a functionally way to say definitively, yes, this is going to work. But regardless, guys, that's the end of our traffic AI video for City Skylines 2. Hope you enjoyed it. If you enjoyed all the parts or any of the parts, be sure to let me know in the comment section down below. What are you most excited for? What do you have worries about? I'm pretty optimistic overall. The City Skylines 2 devs are absolutely fantastic people who will go out of their way to make sure that we get the best experience possible. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel. This is Havoc, and I'll see you in the next one.